What is up, gamers? The Red Dragon here, and we are covering the top stories on VGN. So I've been getting a lot of questions. I got like 3 messages on Twitter just yesterday asking about this whole 1080p versus 720p deal with the Xbox and PlayStation 4. So I'm going to be talking about resolutions and frames per second in this video a little bit. But first, let me ask you something. Have you ever played a game and walked away and thought, oh my god, that game blew. It wasn't in 1080p. No. Have you ever heard somebody ask another gamer, hey, are you picking up such and such game? And the other gamer replies with, hell no. Have you heard what resolution it's in? No, you haven't. So, no matter what resolution, frames per second, they don't make a game. Some of the best games I've played weren't even in HD. So I think that's probably the biggest lesson to take away when it comes to talking about resolutions and frames per second. But let's talk about this for a second, because it does make a difference. And, you know, 1080p, 60 frames per second, not to diminish it, because that is an awesome target to hit. And your game is going to be really smooth at that. And it is awesome that PlayStation 4 owners are going to go home and they are going to get optimal graphics on some of these games. Now, the latest rumor that everybody's talking about right now is that on Call of Duty on PlayStation 4, it's going to be 1080p, 60 frames per second. On Xbox One, it's only going to be 720p resolution that would be upscaled to 1080p. So I'm not going to really dig a whole lot into this because it's just a rumor, but let's just say that it's true. It wouldn't surprise me if it is. They're being really quiet on it, and they could be quiet because maybe they know it's true, but it looks like they could get it out of the way if they just go ahead and admit it. Or maybe they're working on, you know, trying to up the resolution as it stands right now. I don't know. Either way, you know, we've talked about the PlayStation 4 being more powerful than the Xbox One, but I really don't think when it comes to this that is where you can actually look and say, this. You can't look at lower resolution games on launch on Xbox One and say, yes, definitely, that means the Xbox One is less powerful. That just doesn't make any sense. I think what makes more sense is if you go back and you look at what we've been reporting. You know, I've talked about it here, I've talked about it on VGN. The developers have been saying for months that the PlayStation 4 has been faster to develop for. They've had their tools ready for the developers further along, and it's been faster, getting everything ready and optimized faster than the Xbox One. And this story has been in the news for a while. So I'm not saying that they're still not ready. I'm not saying that the developers don't have the tools ready now. I don't know. I haven't heard in several weeks, but I'm saying that is definitely a possibility. And so you just look at a game like Battlefield 4, which EA has said, or DICE has said, that they made sure that on consoles, on the Xbox and the PlayStation 3, if you're looking at this generation, this game is going to look a lot better than Battlefield 3 did. Now, don't compare it to the beta. Go watch the trailers for like the Xbox 360 version, which looks really good, which has got all the HD graphics and everything like it's supposed to. But my question is, could you have taken Battlefield 4 and placed it on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 7 years ago or 6 years ago? No, you couldn't have. If you look at what these developers say, no matter what the publisher is or who it is, you know, Rockstar or Crysis, whenever they're developing for these games, especially in the last few years, they've all said, you know, we've managed to crank out every last known trick known in the books in order to get the last bit of power out of these systems. And so you couldn't have done that early on in the generation. So the launch games on both PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One are not going to look near as good as they will 5 years from now. And what really seems to be a problem for Xbox One at this point is the SRAM, which Microsoft believes is going to help them in the long run, but in the short run, whenever they are first launching, they have not optimized the tools so that this is easy to work with for developers. And you can go Google this. There's lots of stories about developers saying this. So I don't necessarily look at this resolution problem as a problem that means that your games are going to be any more suckier because of the graphics, you're never going to notice the difference unless you're playing them side by side. But if you do want to see a difference, I mean, there is going to be a difference. And I'll leave a link down in the description box to an article that does a really good job of showing you like a simulation of what it would look like on the Xbox One. But here's the last thing that I want to point out. Both the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One and the Wii U, actually the Wii U has the most 1080p 60 frames per second games out there. So all three platforms can achieve this. That we know. We also know that all three platforms have games that aren't 1080p 60 frames per second. But that's probably going to get better as time rolls along. And as it stands right now, it seems as if the PlayStation 4 is out in front, and that is definitely great news for those gamers. I think as far as the frames per second debate goes, you know, the important games seem to be getting the frames per second. Killzone, whenever you get online, it's 60 frames per second. On single player, it goes down to 30 frames per second. Frames per second really makes a difference whenever you're dealing with twitchy games, shooters primarily. If you're dealing with other games, then it really doesn't make as much of a difference, especially if you're looking like at a game from a top-down view or maybe a action-adventure game. I know Dead Rising has been talked about. Some people were complaining that it wasn't 60 frames per second, but I mean, if you look at the gameplay, it looks pretty freaking smooth, and they're creating over 1,000 zombies on the screen at once, and every single zombie looks different. So, I mean, that's asking a game to do a lot, it seems. So, I mean, does 30 frames per second really make that much of a difference in that particular game? No, but it might in a Call of Duty or a Battlefield, which those games are going to be 60 frames per second online, which is what matters. So I think both games can hit it, both games can't. PlayStation further along, Xbox One, I think the tools are further behind, so that's keeping it further behind. But I don't believe for a second that your game would be any less enjoyable due to a lower resolution that is being upscaled to 1080p. But that's just my opinion. Post yours down below. Also, check out the links in the description box. I'll leave some good articles if you want to read more about this subject and see some demonstrations so you can see that there is indeed a difference when it comes to 1080p versus other resolutions. It's a much clearer picture, but some of those I guarantee that you're going to have to watch several times in order to notice the difference. I know I did. So that does it for me, the Red Dragon. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.